Episode 5 is brought to you by the fun folks at Outright Entertainment. With personalized DJ and entertainment services based out of Calgary, Alberta, Outright Entertainment is perfectly poised to do your corporate and social event, personalized wedding, or community and school dance. For more information, hit them up on the web at outrightentertainment.com or by phone at 587-333-4803. You're listening to Death's Twilight, a podcast novel written by A.J. Levins, performed by the author, and a full cast, including Mike Nelson, Kara Pierce Singh, Ryan Lintner, Jeff Fauché, Dave Olfert, Chantal Proud, Trevor Sarju, Rachel Bonyac, Kayla Romaine, Marika Beard, Dan Beard, Dan Levins, Connie Levins, and Joshua Meyer. This podcast is suitable for ages 12 and up and does contain scenes of violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Not a whole lot to tell you about since episode 4 was released last month. Give you a quick brief update. Death's Midnight, Book 2 of the Meechan Chronicles, is in progress as we speak. We have almost 40,000 words written. That means we are just about halfway to the first draft of the book, and then we will send it off to some beta readers to have a read and see what you think, and then make some edits and changes from there. The podcast is in full swing. And we have a new voice as Hotaru for this episode. Say hello to Marika Beard. You can find her on Facebook. And here we go with episode 5. Previously on Death's Twilight.
Advanced detection tools for cancer patients developed.
We certainly can't let them occupy hours of our time. When we have precious cargo in the harbor, now can we?
I just realized that there are no young people in Crimea. Like none. Zero.
They're still in the mine. They collapsed 20 years ago, killing everybody in sight. It sounds like we need to visit the principal's office again.
Requested acrobatics, aerial acrobatics and gymnastics. Requested skill time frame, 24 hours. Cost 1,000 steel royals. Download time, 7 hours, 34 minutes. Accept. Yes or no?
Chapter 10. Igor's Hostel, Ural Territory. December 5th, 2308. 0100, 2 minutes, 3 seconds. T-minus, 10 hours, 9 minutes, 8 seconds. The full moon shone brightly in the Moscow night sky. The last of the vendors' lights had been extinguished over 2 hours ago, and silence filled the once bustling market street. Snow covered the streets, reflecting the moon's light, turning the usually dark square into a beacon of light. On the east side of the street, one window was lucky enough to receive more moonlight than the rest. On the second floor of the hostel, the light from the full moon shone through the window of the room being used by Hotaru Kagami. Hotaru tossed and turned in the king-size bed in her room. Rapid movements of her eyes beneath closed eyelids indicated she was dreaming, but her outward actions told that it was not a pleasant dream. The sheets and duvet had long since been kicked to the floor, and her pajamas were soaked with sweat, her hair plastered to her forehead. 2 men held her as the lady came closer with the 6-pointed syringe.
No.
She felt the sleeve torn from her right arm. As the sleeve slipped over her hand, she wrenched it free from the second man's grip. Her right arm came up over her head and then slammed against the mattress. The man grabbed her arm and forced it back down by her side, exposing the tender flesh of the crook of her arm. The syringe was jabbed into her arm near the elbow. Her right arm flexed, and a scream of pure horror tore from her mouth, echoing off the walls of the bedroom. She was suddenly calm and dropped her arm to her side, turning to the first guard. His face was wrong, like it was a wax mask that was melting. Hotaru's arm returned to the mattress, and her head turned to the left. Her face registered fear, and a low moan escaped her throat. She turned to the second guard. His face and neck were covered with small little bumps that made his skin look like that of a reptile. She tried to back up, but she was against the wall. Turning her head to the right, Hotaru pushed into the mattress, trying to escape an enemy only she saw. The two men grabbed her, dragging her behind them as she struggled for freedom. They were too strong. The three of them went through a doorway into a room full of people in various states of decay. She could see Abu Jamal's corkboard and papers on a wall at the far end of the room. The two men turned, exiting the room, shutting the door behind them. The seams of the doorway disappeared, and there was a solid wall with no way out. The people in the room crowded around her, reaching for her. They crowded in around her, pushing her to the floor. The last thing she saw was a sea of faces as they piled on top of her. She screamed. Hotaru sat bolt upright, eyes wide, breathing heavily. The last vestige of her scream echoed in the room. Hotaru rubbed the sweaty hair out of her eyes and took a quick look around the room. Everything was where it was supposed to be, all except the sheets, apparently. Recalling the details of her dream, she remembered a hospital with pale green walls, being dragged down a hallway by two men as naked bulbs flitted past overhead. A six-pointed syringe. A room with no door or window as people crowded around her with oozing lesions and skin so gray it looked like cement. She rubbed at her eyes with the heels of her hands and brushed her hair back over the top of her head. What was she dreaming about? Standing from the bed, she headed into the washroom and programmed the shower. As the water cascaded over her, she remembered the note on the magazine in Abu Jamal's office. Cancer cured for years. What was he talking about? Cancer was still around. Her mother had passed away from cancer 10 years ago. What were the circles on the map for? So many questions. Maybe she would get to Abu Jamal's before the 1 o'clock appointment and ask him a couple of questions. Feeling calmer, she shut off the shower and toweled off. She placed her pajamas and undergarments in the laundry bin. They would be ready for tomorrow. She wrapped her kimono around her body and made the bed. Unable to sleep from the memories of the nightmarish visions, she grabbed the magazine she pilfered from Abu Jamal's office, sat in the high-back chair, and propped her feet on top of the heat register. She turned to the feature article.
Advanced detection tools for cancer patients developed.
It was written by some doctor she had never heard of, but she paid that no attention. There was a ton of medical jargon that Hotaru couldn't understand, but the gist of the article indicated that there were new genetic tests that could be run on patients that would tell if a patient was predetermined to have certain types of cancers. The tests were more successful on certain types of cancers, like lung and ovarian, for example, and less successful on prostate and skin cancers. The test involved having a chip implanted in the patient's hip and monitoring the information sent back over a period of 2 months. Data was then gathered, and the chip biodegraded, becoming natural human waste. Near the bottom of the right-hand page, there was a graph showing the potential of saved lives by using the early detection program, nearly 2 million. There was a line drawn in felt pen at a level representing 50 deaths. In neat block letters beside the line, someone, Abu Jamal, Hotaru guessed, had written,
Save 2 million? Cancer responsible for 50 deaths in Moscow last year.
Underneath the graph was a picture of the doctor who had written the article, lecturing a class of students. His head was circled in the same felt pen, and the words,
Works for government defense,
were there beside it. It seemed that Abu Jamal had done some detailed research on cancer and its progression. She would definitely have to talk with him to get more information. Her eyelids were getting heavy, so she decided it was time for bed. She'd have to take the magazine back in the morning before he realized it was missing. As she slid under the covers, she adjusted her kimono to keep the least amount of skin exposed to the now cold sheets. Tomorrow she would have some answers, and another letter delivered. With that thought, she drifted off to sleep once again. Chapter 11. Hotel Agora, December 5th, 2308. 0638 seconds. T-minus 6 hours, 2 minutes, 34 seconds. Kozel and Slade both woke at the harsh sound of the chronometer's alarm. Slade was tempted to snooze it once, but he realized there was too much at stake. There was a letter to deliver. Slade jumped in the shower, instantly missing his preset temperature unit from the college as the cold water hit his bare skin. After a lather and shave, Slade vacated the washroom so Kozel could get himself clean. Heading to the kitchen, Slade made some bacon, eggs, and toast for them both. There was no juice, but that was quickly fixed with a call to the Agora's manager, who was still more than willing to accommodate an emissary within his walls. The juice arrived just as Kozel exited the washroom to eat.
So, what is game plan, emissary?
We'll eat first, because you're going to need all of your faculties if we were to pull this off. Do you have the ability for a skill upgrade? Sorry, Kozel. I should not have asked such a personal question. What I meant to say was, are you familiar with the skate system?
Yes, emissary.
Great. I've taken the liberty of ordering you a sprinting and climbing upgrade. I think you're going to need them for today's mission.
But, emissary, the funds.
Are being taken care of by I-Corps. You are assisting me, after all. You can download after you eat.
I suppose I am helping. What is for breakfast?
They ate quickly and then adjourned to the salon, where the viewing screen already had the blueprints of the principal's office on the screen. Slade accessed the system and pulled up the blueprints of the motion sensors, making the screen show both at the same time. Kozel looked blankly at the motion sensor documents.
What is that? I recognize the office prints from yesterday, but the other?
That's a generic pressure sensor device. I figure the ones on the roof won't be that much different from these. Have you started downloading yet? We've got 2 hours before we leave.
I am on it.
He punched a series of numbers into his chronometer. It chirped twice to acknowledge the command. The light changed from blue to red, and Slade could see a progress bar begin to slowly fill. Kozel closed his eyes, and Slade could see his eyes moving rapidly behind his eyelids. After a few moments, he opened them again, shaking his head slightly like he was trying to clear some dizziness.
Downloading has begun, emissary.
Good. Now look here on these prints. The easiest access to McDonald will be a direct shot to her office. You can be sure that she's beefed up her security since our last visit. And even if they're older like those other guards, we can be stopped by sheer numbers alone.
I don't particularly want to kill anyone, either.
I agree. No one is going to die. Except Herman at his appropriate time.
So, why do we have pressure sensor blueprints?
Well, you see the skylight above McDonald's office? It's wired with 6 sensors. According to this, they're set to go off if anything heavier than a squirrel touches it.
Don't forget the cameras, emissary.
Oh, I haven't. Watch this.
Slade placed his hand on Kozel's chronometer and slowly used his subdermal tattoo to copy the chronometer exactly. It took about a minute, but the look of astonishment on Kozel's face was worth it.
Your hand. It disappeared.
Touch your chronometer.
He did so, and felt Slade's quite solid hand. He looked quickly between the chronometer and Slade.
How did...
I have a subdermal tattoo. It allows me to bring images, letters, or symbols to the surface of my skin, using tiny LED emitters implanted in areas of dense muscle tissue.
So, you're like a chameleon?
No, not really. But I can see how you would make that connection. Just takes me a lot longer.
Still a useful thing to have.
Indeed.
The plan was simple. Slade would gain access to the skylight using the skills he had acquired the previous night, disabling or destroying the cameras as needed, and would use his subdermal tattoo to assist in camouflaging him. Once on the roof, Slade planned to detach the skylight from the roof and pop unannounced into McDonald's office.
Is there any way we can listen to what's going on in that office before we crack the seal? I'd hate for her to climb up because she suspects something.
You've got a good point. I should have thought of that yesterday. I think at this point we'll just have to confront her with the information we have, and then hope she fesses up.
But we don't have information, emissary.
But she doesn't know that, and I'm counting on that fact. The element of surprise is definitely in our favor at this point.
And if Herman is in the office too?
Then we get a 2-for-1 deal.
Sounds like you have it all planned out. Why do you need me?
I need you to make sure I can get out of there afterwards. You're going to be up on the roof, away from the cameras. I need you to pull me up once I'm done getting the information I need. I'm going to need you to be able to climb anything you see. And if we get into trouble, I need you faster than a cheetah.
No kidding. When do we move?
10 minutes? Can you be ready?
I'll be waiting for you.
Chapter 12. Igor's Hostel, Ural Territory, December 5th, 2308. 0700, 7 seconds. T-minus 4 hours, 11 minutes, 4 seconds. Hotaru woke with a start. Her chronometer's alarm was beeping steadily, and she silenced it, looking at the time. 7 a.m. Her alarm had been going off for an hour, and she hadn't heard it. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten, and she could actually see traces of blue breaking through the penetrating dark of the previous night. She groggily untangled herself from the sheet that was wrapped around her legs and got out of bed. She was momentarily confused when she saw her bare legs sticking out from her kimono, but then the memory of the dream came flooding back, and she shuddered. She walked into the washroom, lights already on, and she found her pajamas and undergarments from last night clean and folded neatly on the counter. She hadn't planned on having another shower, but the sudden recollection of the night's events sent a chill through her that went all the way to the bone. She programmed the shower for 43 degrees and stepped into the steaming stream, discarding her kimono to the floor as the door shut. Thoughts of Abu Jamal's office and the dream swirled in her mind's eye, refusing to let go and be banished with the daylight. She stood in the warmth of the water until it started to cool. Turning off the shower, she toweled off, wrapping the towel around her hair to absorb the water within. She dressed quickly, her emissary uniform already laid out the night before. She sat at the dressing table, unwinding the towel and allowing her damp hair to fall on her shoulders. She retrieved the brush and began to brush her hair with long, even strokes. After a few minutes, there was a cascade of black hair around her shoulders. She set the brush down and headed to the front room. She needed some food. Pressing a few buttons on the room's MK2 netted her a fruit plate, some brown toast with cream cheese, and a glass of apple juice. She ate quickly and grabbed her tablet, scanning the information she had gathered from Abu Jamal's computer. She looked at her chronometer. According to his schedule, he was due in the office in roughly an hour. Deciding that she wanted more information on the paper she saw yesterday, she quickly donned her parka, gloves, and glasses and headed out into the snow. The market was just starting to come alive as vendors were uncovering their stalls, wrapping the nylon tarps up in bundles, and securing them for storage. As she made her way to the office, Hotaru was greeted many times, and she replied, smiling and waving to the many people who, out of sheer kindness, welcomed her to their town. It was only a matter of minutes before she stood at Abu Jamal's office. Using her glasses, she quickly scanned the building. No change from last night. She broke in and paused in the threshold, listening for sounds. The cat padded over to her, mewling and purring as it rubbed its head against her shin. She absently stroked the creature's head and then headed straight for the back office. The door was ajar, light on. Had she forgotten to completely shut it last night? Not a chance. Hotaru reached the door and cautiously peered through the opening into the lit room beyond. The room was in order, except the desk. It was completely empty. She popped her head through the doorway, glancing to the back wall where the list and corkboard should be. Empty. Only the silhouette of the corkboard remained on the wall, where time had faded the paint.
What the heck had happened here? Was it Abu Jamal?
Entering the room fully, Hotaru spun a slow circle, taking in the whole room. Only the desk and the corkboard had been touched. Everything else was exactly where she had last seen it. She went to the desk, quickly opening and shutting drawers, hoping to find something that tied to the information she had seen. She found pens, pencils, a ruler, paper clips, and a stapler, but nothing else. Unless you counted the snifter of brandy and 2 glasses. No magazines were hiding in the drawers. Slamming the last 2 drawers shut, she focused on his computer. Hotaru hooked her tablet up again and let it work. While it did, she strode to the bookcases that lined the back wall. She frantically searched through the papers, files, and books to find the magazines she had seen last night in Abu Jamal's office. She knew they would be here somewhere. They had to be. But why couldn't she find them? Scanning the titles on the shelf, she realized there were books in many different languages. Among them, 6 editions of the venerable Gray's Anatomy, including 1 edition from 2004. Things had changed a lot since then, especially with modifications. Some people weren't people anymore. They were more machine than man. A chirp from her tablet drew her attention back to the desk. She darted quickly to the desk, sitting in Abu Jamal's chair, and started keying commands into the computer. She searched the calendar again, but could find no record of any scheduled meetings, including Mrs. Popos' 1 p.m. appointment. Mysteriously absent also were the notes and references to the findings that made up Abu Jamal's case. Had she dreamed it all? There was no way. She still had the magazine from Abu Jamal's desk. She started to dig deeper, using the internet to cross-reference keywords against the dates she remembered from the filing cabinets. She had just come upon a page about the history of smallpox when the door to the office opened. She froze, her head turning quickly to the door, one finger still depressing the left mouse button. He hadn't seen her yet. Releasing the mouse button, a quick press of the Option, Command, and Home keys put his computer back to sleep, and she surreptitiously ejected her tablet, using her hand to cover the speaker as it chirped upon disconnect. Now he noticed her.
What are you doing in my office?
Dr. Hussein Abu Jamal?
Yes, I am he. Do I know you?
Thankfully no, for your sake. My name is Hotaru Kogami, and I work for the government. I have some questions to ask you about this.
What did you do with my notes? Those are private, and you have no right to...
Actually, Doctor, I have the right to any information I need to complete my mission, private or otherwise. I'll say it again. I have some questions about this magazine. I trust that I have your full cooperation.
He paused, weighing his options. This woman, whoever she was, had given him no option but to comply. He glanced at the desk, the wall where the corkboard was, and the still open door. Finally, he slumped slightly and took a step toward the desk.
May I be seated?
Certainly, Doctor.
Abu Jamal sat in his chair and reached for a drawer. Hotaru reacted instantly, her boomstick coming out of its sheath, resting on the desktop. Abu Jamal froze, a look of terror on his face.
I can release the power in this before you touch the drawer, Doctor. Please don't be foolish.
Drink?
No, thank you. I just had breakfast, and I never drink while on the job.
Hands still shaking, he put the glasses and the bottle back into the drawer, shutting it. He looked up at her.
You said you had questions?
Yes, I do. My mother died of cancer 10 years ago. It was the worst thing I could imagine, watching her slip slowly away from me and realizing I could do nothing about it. I come here and find a magazine about advanced detection tools to help fight the battle, and someone's writing is all over the article refuting the claims. Yours, I assume? Care to elaborate with more than a nod?
She withdrew her tablet, setting it in recording mode, and placed it on his desk.
By education, I am a geneticist. I came to Moscow to help a team of doctors study cancer in many forms, to see if there is a genetic link between family members and generations.
Predisposition? But they've known for a fact that there is a connection. They've known that for almost 200 years. Why would you study something that's been proven for so long?
To work on a cure! To make sure that cancer can once and for all be wiped from the face of the earth. Every year, we make new advances and we save a few more people. The more we study, the further we advance, and the more we can save.
But your note says that cancer has been cured for years.
It does. And here's where my propaganda speech stops. I graduated from university in 2299. The day I graduated was the 50th anniversary of the planet being cancer-free.
But my mother, I watched her die. It was definitely cancer.
That's what they want you to think. If you've read the article in the magazine, you'll remember the doctor I circled.
Yes?
Dr. Viktor Frankl. He heads the Research and Development Board for Northern Europe. He has been on the government's payroll for 60 years, since he got out of Stuttgart University, actually. He is also the head of the team that finally eliminated cancer from the earth.
But that's an amazing feat. Why
wouldn't he accept the accomplishment and share it with the world?
Exactly.
In simple terms, money. The government pays him handsomely to keep it quiet. Every year, he releases an infinitesimal portion of the cure, and the medical profession looks like geniuses.
And you think it's time the world knew?
Indeed. I have a meeting with a colleague this afternoon at 1 p.m. to discuss how to best proceed.
But what evidence do you have? No one will believe you if there's no proof.
Abu Jamal patted his blazer pocket, smiling. It turned suddenly to a frown.
My proof!
He spun in the chair to the back of the room, pointing at the blank space where the corkboard had been.
What did you do with my information?
Hotaru thought of the pictures stored safely on her tablet. She had a copy, but so did someone else.
Safekeeping. We had to ascertain how much of a threat you were to the existing government.
I'm a huge threat. Franco will be sunk when I release this information to the world. The citizens of Northern Europe will probably revolt. Don't you see? Anyone who's had cancer or knows someone who has will instantly turn on their governments. This is the biggest uprising since...
Sorry, meeting reminder.
She activated the recognition program, but left the recorder running. Abu Jamal still had information.
Uprising?
There will be a revolt. Trust me.
I don't doubt it. I'm feeling slightly angry myself. But who's telling Frankl to hold back the information?
That I don't know. I've heard rumors, but nothing more. One of them says Frankl gets permission directly from the principal of Northern Europe. But he's just a stepping stone.
A stepping stone?
The rumor is that he was put into power by someone. No one knows who, but his decisions are not his own. You can tell by looking at him. I think he needs permission to do up his fly in the morning when he gets dressed.
And the deaths?
That's a whole new ballgame. My research points to the deaths being targeted. I found one case where a whole family had been wiped out. He used to work for Frankl, but they had a falling out about revealing the cure. Another case had a mother of two drop dead in her kitchen. No association to any government office, not even a post office. A third case had a man in his 20s die while riding his bike to work. Friends say the day before he was completely healthy.
What's the connection?
I have no idea, other than the guy who worked for Frankl. The young guy was known for questioning authority, though. Arrested twice for unlawful protesting.
And who gives these orders?
That I do not know. Sorry.
Another chirp from her tablet. She stopped the recording, saving the file.
Doctor, I'm going to need your signature as to the veracity of these statements. Obviously, the government is very concerned when there is a possibility of a large revolt.
Will I get my research back?
I'll do my best, Doctor.
She closed the recording program, leaving the recognition program running. She handed it to him. Abu Jamal took the tablet, and the process began. A chirp drew his attention to the screen where the "Look Here" message was waiting. He collapsed to the ground, and her tablet skittered to a spot just in front of her feet. With a last reserve of strength, he grabbed her pant leg. She looked down at the dying doctor.
I was right.
Hotaru donned her glasses, activating the X-ray mode. She scanned the desk first, finding nothing. A supply closet behind the coat rack hid the corkboard and the papers, and the files from the filing cabinet were stacked neatly on the floor. She flung the coat rack aside and tore open the door. Gathering up the files in one arm, she emptied a file box from the floor of the closet and dumped them into the box. It was time to get out of here, but not without that disc. She reached down to the dead doctor, whose body was already showing small bumps on the backs of his hands, and reached inside his blazer pocket and retrieved the disc. There were still some questions to be answered, but she had many more answers than she had earlier this morning. And who moved the corkboard to that closet? And why? She sat in the desk chair once again and hooked up her tablet, making a complete copy of Abu Jamal's computer. Her last act in the room was to pull all the books from the bookshelves and scatter them on the floor. She wanted this to look like a crime. Gathering her tablet from the desk, Hotaru exited the office, leaving the cat walking around in circles around its owner's dead body. Thank you for listening to episode 5 of Death's Twilight. I think we found out some very, very interesting information in this episode. I wonder where it'll take us as we reveal more of the story. Slade certainly has a plan to get his man, and Hotaru, well, she just found out some very, very important stuff about her mother's death. How will that affect her job? Stay tuned. Episode 6 comes out in a month. Thanks again to our sponsor for this episode, Outright Entertainment. Hit them up on the web at www.outrightentertainment.com or by phone at 587-333-4803. See y'all soon.